Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Nadeina, head of growth at saas.group, serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. So today with me is Jason Cohen, a founder who probably needs very little introduction, but still founder and CEO of WP Engine, the most popular managed WordPress hosting platform in the world today. Welcome. It's great to see you here.
Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. And, like I said, you need very little introduction, but still, if we could get a bit of a background and, in a nutshell, what led you to build WP Engine in the first place?
Well, WP Engine's my fourth startup, and almost all of them are bootstrapped. WP Engine was bootstrapped also for 2 years, but then it really started taking off. It was obvious that the market was even bigger than I thought. And also, I'd had previous success, like building things up to millions in revenue and also selling them in the past. And although every time is different, for sure, I did want a different path this time and a different journey, you might say, different set of trade offs, different goals, different constraints. And again, WP Engine, it was so clear that the demand was high, we were executing really well, the market was enormous, all these kind of factors that mean maybe you could raise money. Maybe it's one of those few cases where that actually makes sense. And so I did, and now we're a multi-billion-dollar company in terms of valuation, many hundreds of millions in ARR. We have 200,000 customers, 1,200 employees. And like you said, we run millions and millions of sites, some of the biggest ones as well. So it's very exciting where it all went. Of course, that journey was 14 years, so not for nothing. so, um, but what led me to start it is I started blogging at my previous company, Smart Bear. And that's how I'm known online as Smart Bear because of that company and the name of that company. And so in, let's say, 2007, blogging was really cool, and people like founders at companies were starting to do it. Like 37 Signals was doing it, for example. There was a couple others that were popular at the time. And so I thought this will be the voice of our company, but only I ever wrote on it. So that's why it's my blog and it's called Smart Bear. And I sold Smart Bear in 2007 and left in 2009 when my wife was pregnant, and then I was a stay-at-home dad for a year. And the blog was a way to sort of stay in contact with the rest of the world and do something that's intellectual, but no deadlines and no expectations and no anything. And so that was actually a really nice project to have during that time where it wasn't demanding in that sense, but it was a good use of your semi-conscious brain, which is what it is in that first year with your sleep schedule and so on. And so the blog just kept getting more popular. And so I would get on these link sharing sites like Hacker News, I still do. And when you get on there, especially on the homepage, you get so much traffic that it would crash the site. So I'd call up other WordPress people, other bloggers, and say, what do you use for WordPress to keep it from crashing when you get a lot of traffic? And the answer was usually, I don't know, but I need that. So let me know if you find something. And so, of course, that sounds like an opportunity. And so after 50 more customer calls, which took a long time, like 4 months, I determined that there were a few things where if I did it, I could charge 10 times as much as what people would normally pay, let's say a GoDaddy or some other shared hosting company, something like $2 or $5. They would be willing to pay more like $50 if we made the site fast and scale, like my problem, secure, because security's always been an issue on the internet in general, of course, and if we did tech support about WordPress, not just tech support that says the server's up, so tech support's finished, right? Which is fine. That's a perfectly fine service, but we could charge more if we were also experts in WordPress. So that was the origin of the company. That's why the initial customers signed up. And to this day, that's still the main reason why a lot of people sign up, even though now we have different product lines and products for people who build sites, product for marketers who own them and run them and use them to make money. And we have a lot of stuff now. Of course, again, 14 years later, there's enough time to do a lot more things. But that's still fundamentally what we are and why people sign up.
Right. And actually, Smart Bear was the reason I found you. Well, I never built anything on WordPress. Well, No, that's a lie. I did, but it was very clunky, and I don't want to go there or remember it ever. But the way I found it, it was very very funny. I think I saw the domain Smart Bear, and I thought, oh my god, that's such a cute name. I have to know what this is about.
Yeah.
And I just so I went for the name, stayed for the content. But funny that you started talking about pricing, how people were ready to pay more because, well, of course I bragged a little bit to some of my friends and colleagues that I was going to interview you, and one of them came back to me and he was like, well, you know what, I have a question. Why is WP Engine so expensive? And I guess, well, of course price went up from what it was 14 years
No, it
ago.
actually went
And
down from what it was. I started with
okay,
$50 being the cheapest, and now the cheapest is 20. So no, the price has
okay,
actually come down over time, not up.
all right, okay, maybe for the other plans like enterprise, well bigger,
We have plans that go, I mean, we have customers paying millions of dollars a year. So we have
right.
a variety. Not at first, right? Again, like
Yeah.
I started focusing on people who are mid-sized or smaller, but not so small as to not care about their websites. Like if you don't care whether your website's fast or whether it's up, which is most sites, most people's sites, they don't care, then you should not be a customer of WP Engine. You should pay $2 a month at a shared hosting site because $2 a month is so high ROI. I mean, how could anything be $2 a month at all? It's so cheap. So for the long tail of sites where you don't really care, yeah, you should use something else that's priced accordingly. But if you care about those things, they're not free to make them. I mean, even if I were custom building a thing, right, I couldn't do it as cheaply as WP Engine can because it costs money to use the best processors and to have a lot of memory and have headroom so that if you scale and all the technology to block bad guys and cache good things, but not to cache it too much so that it's stale, and set up additional kinds of servers and services and for caching and other things around the world as well as on your server, and keep up with the latest security patches, and also make sure the operating system is secure and always patched and monitored. And you just keep going and going, and it's like, oh yeah, it sounds like all of that would add up to something, and that doing it yourself is sort of silly because you couldn't do all that. So again, if you didn't care about any of that, okay, well, great. But if you did care, then it's way more expensive to do it yourself. And so it makes sense to pay uh, for a company like WP Engine, where obviously we amortize the cost of all that across 200,000 customers, and we get good deals from the cloud providers because we buy so much of it. And so, okay, we can deliver something that would cost you many times more for these reasons. So that just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer. But was the price or like a possible price one of the questions that you were asking your potential customers that you reached out to during those 4 months of initial idea
Yes, I don't.
validation?
Yes, there's a philosophy that says when you do custom development, that you should not talk about price because you should just understand their life, their challenges, how they think about things, how they talk about it, what do they use today, and not talk about price or the kind of the act of buying. Um, I do agree that you should find out all the things I just listed. But I disagree that you should leave price out of it because to me, price is part of what the product is, both in terms of whether they're interested, but even the branding, the positioning, the mental picture they have of what is it. So, if I'm describing some software that does emails and it's pretty smart and it can da da da, and you go, okay, that email product sounds pretty good. And then I say, oh, by the way, it's $1,000 a month per person. You go, whoa, 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 whoa. And suddenly you say, wait a minute. First of all, there's no way I'm going to pay that. And I'm like, yeah, but think about how much time you save. Think about what your time is worth. It actually is worth that. And let's suppose I'm even right. You'd still probably say, wait a minute, go over those features again. Like I can't, because the price is inextricably linked to what it is. Or vice versa. If you're telling me this is a luxury, amazing thing and it's also free or it's $1, I don't believe you. Like it's not luxury if in that case. So price is part of what it is, and so I think you have to talk about it in those early stages. Now, the flip side, which I also agree with, is customers won't. It's hard for them to be honest about what they'll pay, and I don't think it's deception. I think they really don't know. It's hard to say what you'll actually do. Like you might say, this feels expensive, but will you actually buy it anyway is the question. And it's hard to know actually until you're faced with it. So I don't talk about it too much because I feel like it's hard to just ask questions and get it. Now, there's lots of techniques out there about how to interview for that, but it's a very specific kind of interview. You're doing things like preference ranking, and there's certain techniques you can use that to me are beyond just customer development. Um, so I do like those things. It's okay. It's probably too much for just a 45-minute call to with a potential customer to try to understand your product. That's probably too much stuff, but maybe not. So in general, I think you should talk about. You need to understand the order of magnitude, or you might say the threes. Like, is it 10 or 30 or 100 or 300 or 1,000? Like, kind of the tens or threes level of what is it needs to be talked about. It'll also segment the customers of people who are like, oh, that's cheap. Of course I'll buy that. And then the next person you talk to will say, whoa, I would never spend that. And then what you understand is it's about them, not about your product. It's about who you're talking to and how much value they put and what their budget is and whatever it is about them. So you might determine, for example, oh, well, I want to charge 30 or 50 or $100 a month. It turns out there's a certain segment of people who think that's cheap and a segment of people who thinks that's expensive. So I guess I'm going to target the types of people who think that that's cheap. And now, do you know what that is? Like, having talked to them, do you now have some size and shape? Oh, they work at this type of company, or they have this role, or they're solving this particular problem, not this other problem, or what is it about them where they're in that segment? Because that seems like the one you want to target. That's going to be a more profitable business where you don't have to have as many customers in just sheer number to get to the point where, let's say, you could quit your day job, or that you're making this much in profit, or whatever your sort of next goal is. So that kind of, sometimes people call that market selection or segment selection. That's equally interesting. And again, putting price in the conversation helps you identify that. So I do think you need to talk about price. That's the kinds of things you're looking for early on in that. We do have that situation, and it's actually quite interesting how it shakes out. It didn't start this way. Again, it started with $50 a month, and it was people who had a small business or a medium-sized business. Sometimes it was a personal business, like a consultant. Sometimes it was a corporation. That was where I started. But if I fast forward just for this point of segmentation, I can tell you something interesting, which is when the pandemic hit and budgets suddenly became very tight across the board, whether you were big or small. People were like, whoa, we don't have any money. Everything's screwed up. And at least we're very risk averse. We certainly don't want to be spending lots of money on new stuff. What happened was the customers on the smaller end, who, as you say, see us as expensive, right? They were like, oh, maybe I can't afford this anymore. So some left, although we did a whole lot of like forgiveness stuff, and maybe we won't charge you for 6 months. We'll half price it for a year. Like, we did a lot of things to try to help people out, because of course we feel for folks, and we'd rather keep someone and even be unprofitable for a while than just lose them altogether. Plus, it feels like the right thing to do. So we did a lot of that. But anyway, a lot of people just went out of business anyway, right? So we had a lot of loss on the low end for these reasons. But on the high end, it was exactly the opposite. See, on the low end, we are the most expensive and the best. So you just have to decide if that's what you want. But on the high end, we're the opposite. We're compared to an enterprise CMS like an Adobe Experience Manager, a Sitecore, Acquia, these kind of things that large companies use. Compared to that, we're a 10th or 100th the price. So if you're McDonald's and you want to launch a campaign in Germany, you can do that for 100th the price if you do it with us and WordPress and some German agency than you can using your main technology. Oh, so we're enterprise grade, but we're the low-cost leader in their eyes. Just the opposite end of the sort of strategic spectrum, you might say. So we found that our enterprise business grew for that reason, because we were the high ROI answer, but was slowed on the low end, just like it was for most companies. So that just shows the power of segmentation and how the same product at the same prices can be seen very differently by different segments. Now, at that point, that was 10 years in. We were at the point where we could have multiple segments, multiple kinds of customers, and have go-to-market motions and products for everyone, because we were at a scale where that actually made sense. We could make those investments. Early on, you don't want to be splitting your attention that way, and we didn't either. But later on, as you scale, of course, moving into adjacent areas is part of how you continue to grow.
Absolutely. I was just having another podcast with a founder who said at first the product was priced at like $11, and it was really difficult to actually for anybody to see the value and to start paying. But now the tickets go up to like $200,000 per year, and people are happy to pay that because, well,
Mm.
it's right for them. But yeah, I mean, also just comparing then and now. Obviously, at first you had to do all the calls and customer support probably. And I really loved how you once said on an interview that the early stage founders can offer that high level, really
Mhm.
personalized customer support as an advantage. But I also, and we'll get to this, but I also wanted to just ask how do you feel like that stage when you had to do all the manual work and you have to be really hands-on, be this like 0 to 1 scrappy founder, or I mean maybe not as scrappy after your exit, but still very hands-on, or does it feel like you're a 1 to 100, 1 to 1 million kind of person, and you enjoy what's going on right now a bit more?
I'm not sure what kind of person I am. Obviously, I'm a 0 to 10 person, having done it multiple times. They're just different. It's sort of like you have 3 children, which is your favorite, and it's like, well, they're different. It's not. So I'm not sure. I do like that scrappy early stuff. Like you said, you had to do support. I liked doing it. I like processing tickets. I even had this weird thing where I liked it if the servers were messed up at 2 in the morning and I had to wake up and fix it. I don't know whether it's the heroics or the fact that you're needed, or the fact that I don't know, that you feel like it's for some good purpose. But somehow I liked it. Now, if it happened every night, I wouldn't like it. But if it's occasional, I actually kind of enjoyed the fire drill of it. So I don't know why. Maybe that's a bad thing. I'm not sure. I haven't had to get up in the middle of the night for something in so long, because obviously we have um, great processes to detect and remedy, and we have teams that are 24/7. So I haven't had to do that in many, many years. Um, but it's funny. I actually kind of liked it. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's the kind of attitude you need early on, so that it is fun instead of burning you out to do some of what you might call the drudgery, or undesirable things, I guess.
Right. Okay. So about the customer support and having to wake up at 2 in the morning because someone needs something working, and you're the only one who could solve it. Uh, like basically, to what stage can you do that, and like how do you prioritize? Because you obviously want to work on the product and you want to think about your pricing and you want to sell the solution that you're building. How to prioritize what goes first? How did you do it?
Well, so in our case, the service has to be 24/7, because that's what you're paying for, a website that never goes down. So we had to do that. I think for most people, including myself at previous companies, it's a lot easier to build products that are not 24/7, products where if they're down for 4 hours in the middle of the night, doesn't matter. Um, and I say that kind of with air quotes, like, I mean, I'm sure someone cares, but like it's not going to fundamentally hurt your business. It's not part of the core value proposition. So when Salesforce says we're going to go offline for an hour for maintenance, um, at a time of day that makes sense for your business, it's okay. Like, it's not ideal. You rather they didn't, but it's okay. You're not going to quit Salesforce because of it. And that's most products. So first of all, maybe don't pick a product that requires that kind of attention if you don't like that kind of work. Um, but how to prioritize? Um, Let me take support as a separate question. How to prioritize, let's say, quality, like uptime and bugs and that sort of stuff, versus new features. Um, what I think is this: there is some baseline of quality that you need for people to not leave, or for you to fulfill the basic promise of your product. In our case, we need very high uptime, simply because that's part of the point of the product. We need high performance because that's part of why they're buying it. Okay, For other products, there's some kind of requirement uptime. It's bad if it's down every hour. It's no good. But you would have some more relaxed definition of what good enough means. So you write down what this good enough means, of course, in some objective way that you can measure, like some probe is checking the site for performance and for uptime. These are free or $5 a month. This is not hard to make, okay? So something like that. And you decide like, all right, 99% uptime is good enough or whatever. As long as the software is working within that tolerance, the amount of time you spend on quality is zero. In other words, you've decided this is good enough, because once it's good enough, making it a little better is not going to grow the company and not going to keep customers by your own definition of what good enough means. So if it's good enough, you don't do anything there. You work on everything else. But if it goes out of tolerance, then you say, now I'm failing my basic promise to my customers. I'll be losing customer. Like, I could have the best features in the world, but if the site's down too much, they'll leave anyway. Therefore, if it's out of tolerance, then that does become the most important thing, and I have to work on it until it's within tolerance again. And this is a model that Google uses. They call it, there's something called the SRE handbook that's free online by Google. This is the method that they also talk about. So if you wanted more detail about exactly how they do it all and everything, that's a free online book. So that's how we operate. And to this very day, that's how we operate. It's just our tolerances are really high. So that requires us to have incredible automated systems and do all this work so that it's true that we're within tolerance. So another thing that you do is over time, you might change your mind about where the line is. It could be early on, this such and such is good enough. But then a couple of years later, you're like, well, actually people are starting to complain, or even just for our own pride, we're just not okay with the current level. We want it to be more. We just want to. Okay, that's fine. You're making a decision. It's okay. So you reset the line and etc. So that's how you kind of decide what's good enough and then when to invest in it. With tech support, I think it's a totally different question. You have to decide whether tech support is one of your competitive advantages or not. Because great tech support beyond, well, actually, even if it is the founder, but great tech support is expensive. It's expensive because it's people. And I know now it's AI. Okay, fine. Then you have to train the AI. You have to watch on the AI. The AI can only answer simple questions. And so if you want great support, that's still the complex questions, which still means people. It probably means 24/7, which means a lot more people than you may think, because let's just call it 3 shifts roughly, right? 3 8-hour chunks in 24 hours. And how many people per shift? Well, it can't be one, because then if someone gets sick, no one's there. So you really need at least 3 people, like minimum 3 people per shift. So that you say, okay, that's 3 times 3 is 9. No, because it's every day. People don't work every day. So you need weekends and holidays. So usually 12 to 15 is the absolute minimum number of people you need for quote unquote 24/7. And that's with very little scale. That's with very little activity. So, and those people, if those people aren't great, then your tech support still isn't good. So it's expensive to have good support. If it's products that have great support are often beloved by their customers. It often is a reason why they stay, either because they know they have it or they take advantage of it, or just because they know it's out there, that they use it that one time. They're like, oh my gosh, those people are so responsive and smart. You just get this reciprocity of wanting to tell other people that you're good, willing to pay a higher price because, wow, that they're the best. So whether it's word of mouth growth or they just stay, another competitor has a new feature that they'd like, but they like you because tech support is human and they like you. See, then they'll stay. So tech support absolutely can be this powerful engine of growth and retention and customer love. And also you just are giving a great service. Isn't that nice? Like maybe that's just what you want to do as a person. So it's a wonderful thing, but it's also very expensive. And this is why you have to decide. I'm either going to get all of the benefits from this, which are many, and the expense and difficulty of managing it. And I say scaling it in quotes, not even scaling it to like really, really big, just 24/7, which you might not think of as scale, but it already is, in fact. Either you're going to invest in that, and that's going to be one of your competitive advantages and the reasons why you're going to grow and succeed. And so you want to pour even your brand into that and so on. Or it's not worth that investment to you. You don't believe in that. You think good enough is good enough. It can just be whatever. AI, which is just a knowledge base with you know, a little bit better than that, is enough. In which case, okay, great. In that case, uh, I wouldn't say as soon as possible, because there's very early on, there's many things to do, but pretty soon you're going to want to kind of get rid of all of that, quote unquote, because it's not an advantage and therefore it's not worth a lot of your time. So maybe you're offshoring it, maybe you're replacing with AI, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe you do need to write really good documentation so that the AI knows what to do. Okay. So, you know, you could back into some of these things, and maybe that's your path. Probably most companies, that's their path, because most companies don't invest in that kind of thing. But obviously, either one is a perfectly intelligent thing to do. So you have to pick. And how do you pick? Well, part of it could be your own personal desire, of course. Also, I would ask, what are the other decisions in your strategy? What are the other important things about how your product wins, who your customers are, what your price point is, what kind of a product are you? You know, these are all strategic questions, right? Like, what are you and how will you win? How will you be different? So I would ask, how does tech support fit in there? Does having like an outsourced AI tech support fit in with, commensurate with the rest of the stuff? Like if it's really cheap, then I would expect worse tech support. That's okay. If it's really expensive and I can never get my hands on a human, that feels worse. You can do it, you know, there's no laws, but it's a little bit of a mismatch. So I would ask, this decision, how does it fit with your other strategic decisions? Of course, you do this with all your strategic decisions, and they need to match each other, right? That's one of the kind of tenets of a good strategy, is that you've made many interlocking decisions that reinforce each other and make sense and are rationalized with each other. That's just a good strategy. So this is, to me, a strategic question, since it takes such an investment, such a big decision, so many things come next. So it's a strategic level decision of what are you, how will you win? So it needs to match the rest of those decisions, and that's how I would decide. But again, if you just say, I just don't care, or I just never want to have that. I want the product to sell itself and be simple enough. It doesn't need it. Da da da. Perfect. Or the reverse, like at WP Engine, we decided to invest in support. That service is one of the reasons why you're paying in the first place. So we've always invested a ton in support, and that's smart too.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think it's a very compelling picture on how you decide on what to prioritize. But well, you know, there are a ton of podcasts where you were talking about all the successes, and obviously, you know, WP Engine is the last one, the latest. No, let's not say the last. I was wondering, was there anything like you started because, you know, from this high level, it seems like everything you touch turns to gold. Was there any project that you started that failed?
Yeah, I mean, when before WP Engine, I had other ideas and I had prototypes and I talked to customers about it, but I determined that it wasn't a good enough idea. I say good enough because, like, often when you have an idea and a prototype, like, it didn't come from nowhere. You were inspired by some kind of problem. You made some sort of tech that's some kind of interesting. So when you show it to a potential customer, often their first reaction is, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And unfortunately, a lot of people stop there and they're like, "Yes," and then they're like, "I've got validation. I'm going to build it now." They often say it's really cool. Like, people like to be nice to you. They don't want to tell you, you know, what are they going to tell you? Like, this sucks. Like, some people will, but a lot of people won't, right? Like, and it's not their job to. Like, this, they're not trained to tell you the truth. You ask, "How's your haircut?" And you're like, "It's fine." You know, like, that's how it goes. And also, you do probably have a kernel of, like, that is probably a problem people roughly have. This product does have a couple of neat features, like, probably. So you got to dig a lot deeper than that. Some people say try to get the check then, which I like that. It may be a little bit too high a bar, but maybe not. It's nice to ask that. Um, some stuff that presses customers to try to find out if they really want to, if they really use it, but isn't so bad as like, give me your credit card right now, even though it doesn't work. Would be, ask them to describe step by step how they would use this in their life, like in your workflow or your work. Like, it depends on the tool, obviously, right? But like, how is it that you would use this? Like, describe to me, would you log in every day? Why? Like, when would you decide to log in? And then what would you do? And often when you do that, they start saying things like, I mean, I already have this other thing, and so I'm not sure. I guess I would open it after this, but would I? I mean, I don't, right? And suddenly you realize they wouldn't really use it, or they'd say, they get halfway through it. Yeah, yeah, I'd go in there and I'd look at my data, and then I would, oh, I have to get into Salesforce. I have to export to Salesforce. Does it integrate with Salesforce? Oh, no, it doesn't integrate with anything. Oh, yeah, then I guess I couldn't use it. See, like getting them to step through it, they start realizing. But at the same time, you start hearing, oh, if I integrate with Salesforce, maybe. So if you were to hear, oh, they always need to get that into their CRM. I'm just making up random things because it depends on the product, right? But you might start hearing these patterns, and of course now you're figuring out what the product really should be. So that's part of why this is useful. Is not only does it show you where they get tripped up or actually wouldn't use it, but maybe it points to what they would use. Oh, you thought your product was a CRM, but it turns out your product is a lead management for another CRM. That's the product. Or I just made that up, right? So even with pricing, you can do that. Would you pay $100 a month? I don't know. Yeah, it seems like it's worth that. Okay, so if you were to want to buy this at your company, like what would you have to do? Is there a budget approval process? Is this cheap enough you don't have to ask permission? What would you do? Again, like they're like, oh yeah, I have a credit card. I don't have to ask permission if it's under $500. I would just buy it. And then you'd think, ooh, good, good. Maybe my price should never get too high because then that will change. Or they say the opposite. Oh yeah, well this would go to my boss. I would have to fill out the following report and show them blah blah blah. And then you go, So either they wouldn't do that, or okay, I need the product needs to somehow help them fill that out. Is there some sort of report the product could make that would help them fill that out? Right. Again, it could give you ideas of what the price could be, or that they wouldn't buy it, or how to facilitate the buy. So it's just a long way of saying, making it really tangible about how they would use it, what they would do. That's a nice way to suss out the truth. Again, I don't think people are being deceptive on purpose, but they are definitely deceptive on accident or because they're being polite. And so getting to talk about that sometimes will reveal it. So I had an idea. I did all this, what I'm just saying, and determine, yeah, I guess there are some nice little ideas. People say they like it at first, and then they don't really know what to do with it. They don't really know what it should, like ultimately what it should do and what value it is. And so it just wasn't clear. I did write about this, by the way, and how I figured that out online. So there's more detail to that if you want. I guess it's not that everything I do works. It's that I'm trying to go out there and figure out if it's a good idea or not, actually, before investing a decade or even a year. So if you fail at a short enough time span, then people call it like an experiment, and it's smart again, and it's not a failure. If you spend 5 years and it doesn't work out, then it's called a failure. Well, that's okay. You can think about that then. The quicker you find out, the less you are a failure.
I think that's a great bit. The quicker you find out, the less of a failure it is.
Yeah. Now,
But
you could argue that maybe I did have a good product and I gave up too soon. That maybe I could have picked a subset of those people and built something they wanted and could have made a company. Maybe, we'll never know. It just wasn't clear to me what it is. Whereas with WP Engine, it was really clear. Oh my God, everyone's saying, 70% of people are saying the same 4 things. Oh my gosh, it's so clear. So what I would say is, sure, this is not science. You're not totally disproving a theory. You're not totally proving a theory. Sure. But you could sort of say, what's the risk of this? Or what's the chance of this? How confident am I? What you could say is there could be something in here. I just don't sure what it is. And I'm not sure if I want to roll the dice. Whereas, okay, this other thing, oh my gosh, all the signals are pointing here. This is just so much more obvious. And so there could have been, maybe even the other company could have been bigger. I mean, who knows? Or whatever better could mean. I don't even know however you'd like to define that. Bigger is not necessarily better. So however you'd like to define it. I don't know. Who could know? Life is an experiment you run one time, and n equals 1. I don't know. But one was easier than the other. I think already that means something. You can also have kind of the same mindset as you have when hiring. If you say no to a great hire, it's too bad, but it doesn't hurt your company. If you say yes to a bad hire, it hurts you. It hurts you, it hurts your team, it takes time to figure it out. Then you have to get them to leave. Then you're back to interviewing, and all this time has passed. If you say yes to a bad hire, it's really bad. If you say no to a good hire, it's a shame, but it's not a problem. So same thing. Maybe there was a pony in that first idea, but saying no to it is not a problem. but saying yes to an idea that's you really could have invalidated, but you spent the next 3 years of your life banging away at something that was never going to work. And by work, I do not mean scaling into billions. I mean, if that's your goal, then I guess then yeah, it does have to meet certain criteria. But I mean just enough that you could make as much at your company as you're making as an employee. Just that, right? To me, that is success. Like you're already in the great success because you're doing what you want in your own terms, and you're not, and your savings isn't going down. That's freaking success as far as I'm concerned. Now, it could be as big after that as you want, or as your goals are, etc. All interesting or not. Like to me, all that is interesting. So when I say success, that's all I mean. Just that. Though it's amazing how few products make it there to that level, right? Which to me is like the minimum. Otherwise, because otherwise you have to have a day job and stuff, and then it's not, then it's just some sort of weird side hustle and not a company.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for the answer. I still would love to know like what exactly you were building, but maybe instead of that, we can talk about what you could be building. Because again, I was listening to one of the interviews and there was a question about like a possible exit, right? What if you exit WP Engine at one point, and then what would you do? And you said if this is a quote actually, if I build something new, I'll do it alone, and the fact that it doesn't have to make money is an advantage. And I was like, oh yeah, that's so cool because like you have all the freedom to build whatever you want. But at the same time, there is this narrative in the startup community that you have to have constraints. You have to like build for success, whatever success means for different people out there. And yeah, what do you think about that? Like what we also talked to the founders of 37 Signals about that, and they're like, yeah, well, sometimes we're just building, the calendar or the chat or whatever because we want to. It doesn't have to be super successful. And that's kind of was also a question that I asked them, like, well, if that's how you approach building the product from the first day, isn't that kind of setting it up for failure? Because you're like, whatever. How do you feel about that? Like,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think if you don't care about the product and you're just messing around, then I totally agree with you. I don't think well, I mean, I don't want to speak for 37 Signals people, but I never got the feeling that they didn't care about the product. I got the feeling that they trusted their own instinct and taste about what was good. That if they thought it was good, then a sufficient number of other people will agree, and so it'll work. So they have enormous pride in authorship. They just have no humility about their own opinions about things. And so when they are and so in fact they care an enormous amount. So I think that really caring about it is vital. But I think it's hard to imagine someone who has gone through what they have or I have not caring at all about whatever project they're working on. I think it's just the opposite. We obsess about the projects we're working on. But what's different is the constraints. So like the constraints on day one for them is they got to feed themselves, etc. Now the constraints for them are very different in that they have the cash cow product. I mean, and they earned it, right? But like they can work on whatever they want, and so they can optimize only for their pride of authorship, what they think would be interesting to work on, and also what they want to obsess over in terms of making what they believe to be a great product. And they don't have to optimize for other kinds of financial things. They can just optimize for that. How cool, because that means they can build products that are totally unique in a business model that might be unique, not only because they have their own sensibility and taste, although that too, but also because the financial constraints are different to other companies. So they can afford to do things others cannot, which makes them more differentiated on that, whatever those fronts may be. So I have a similar thing, although I don't want to do what they're doing. What they're doing is building more products for money. And what I meant by that quote is I don't want to make another product at all. I don't want to build a thing for money at all. What they're doing is building a product for money their own way, which is, again, I'm not criticizing, obviously. I think it's awesome. What I'm saying is I don't want to make another company at all. I don't want to make another organization that has to be profitable. That's not interesting to me. So since I don't need more money, I've been building companies for 25 years, Other things are more interesting to me, and I don't have the same constraints anymore, so I can do whatever those other things are. Uh, Good, because that's, if unique is a big word, but let's just say special. It's a special position to be in. I have all this experience, and I have certain things I like to do or that I'm good at, and money is not a constraint, whereas normally it is. And so, what is the intersection of that? Oh, probably something at least very special, if not unique, that I can get obsessed about. So, whether that's in creating more media type stuff, like I've been writing for 17 years, as you know, and so like that's still interesting to me, or philanthropic things. Like there's other things to me that are interesting that don't involve making a product that's profitable. Um, so I don't know what those things are. I mean, I have some ideas, but I mean, I haven't like jumped all in and okay, I'm now I'm doing this. Like I'm not doing that right now, so I can't tell you what it would be. But that's what I meant by that. Like if I were to do another thing, what would its nature be? It would be that it's not for profit, um, and somehow leverages me, and whatever I like as well as what I'm good at, because of course that's in general what humans like.
Okay, that makes sense now. All right, but let's just maybe go a different path. If you had to build something for money these days, what would it be?
Man, it's hard. So first of all, it's it's very easy to throw out ideas, but the details of how you're doing it and for whom and all that validation, that's the whole game, right? That's why there's tons of people who have projects on Twitter and $200 of MRR, right? So I am a big believer in large growing markets, even if you're building a small business. Um, Certainly, it has to be a large and growing market if you want to build a big business, because that's where the money is. Even if you're creating the market yourself, like an Uber or something, okay, either way, it has to be a large and growing market, or else there isn't space for a big company. But for little companies, I also like a large and growing market, because that means there's lots of niches and lots of people already spending money there. It's very hard to be evangelistic and also a small company that's bootstrapped, because you have no funds and attention to use to convince people of stuff like that they should get into strangers' cars, right? That takes a lot more money and attention and things. So um, if you're in even something like a to-do app or a calendar, something that's so oversaturated with stuff, right? But there's always going to be a million people buying a calendar app next month of some kind. And although it's super noisy and everything, if you're the perfect app for a certain kind of thing or a certain kind of workflow or certain whatever, there's some set of people that will maybe be interested in that. Maybe you can build a small company on that. With something like to-do software, sometimes what you see is, okay, there's this certain to-do system. Like the classic one is something like getting things done, right? But so you pick something and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna have the perfect app for that thing. So if you're obsessed with this one kind, this will be the perfect app. And all the other generic apps that do workflow, they sort of can do this, but this is designed for it. And also the Android app's really good. I don't know, whatever, right? And suddenly you have something where for the right segment of persons is perfect. So I like large growing markets because there's lots of niches for you to find. And the big companies, they can't afford to go after some little niche. So they don't. So you can go after a little niche unopposed by even the big, well-funded companies who can't afford to spread their attention around tiny niches. And people are already spending the money. You're not convincing them of that. There's probably already things like podcasts they listen to, websites they go to, search terms they use, conferences they go to, and so on, that you can be at, which is great. Like, you can just kind of join the flood of whatever it is they do. So it's just that. So first of all, it would be something like that. Second of all, it would be a recurring revenue business. I don't believe in the new, like, let's go back to one time. Like, yeah, I get it, but it's such a worse business model. There's a reason why 37 Signals is doing it. They can afford to, because they have this cash cow company product, which, guess what, is recurring revenue. Yeah, no kidding. That's the reason they can afford to do it another way. Like it's so silly. So don't do that. Unlike WP Engine, I would not have it be something that's 24/7. Have a product that it's okay if it's sometimes down, so that your life is turned upside down occasionally. Probably. Now, of course, you can't not mention AI. So I think it's an interesting thing. Like, do you want to avoid AI and be in some space where AI is not relevant? So, for example, communication software where you're connecting two humans, maybe AI. I guess you could do transcripts, but like these are all kind of things you could plug in and not worry too much about it. Or obviously, AI opens up not new markets, but new features in markets. I actually think AI is very, very hard to compete on. And I wrote about this before as well. But the problem is that even the big companies are doing it, not sitting aside waiting for the new tech to unfold, not being scared to do it. They're all doing it. And the AI is not very good. Like, we've all used AI. Occasionally, it can be pretty good. Transcribing text is getting pretty good. Some of the translations is pretty good. Like, there's stuff that's pretty good. But largely, when the products just stick it in there, it's not that good. And it'll get better over time. I realize that. But the point is, everyone's doing it, and it's not that good. So what are you doing exactly? And everyone's doing it. And it's a flood of new companies and incumbents. It's a very noisy thing. So I think just having AI is actually not that interesting. I'm more interested in, like, is there this particular niche in this particular industry where you have some insight into a problem or solving something? And if AI helps you do it, then awesome. But the AI part is not interesting to me. It's the business and the business model and the segments in the industry that's interesting to me. It's always good to sell to people that have extra money. That either is luxury and B2C, although I don't know anything about that space, but obviously it can be very profitable. But in B2B, who has money? So for example, products that try to sell to online creators, that's a really rough road. Creators don't have any money. So on the other hand, large enterprises, they do have big budgets, but they have enormous needs that you probably, as a new company, you almost never can meet unless you've really decided to go after that and you know something about it. So I don't like that either. So the sort of small to mid market, like the people HubSpot target, Dharmesh just posted on Twitter, like, happy 18th birthday, HubSpot. And also we still target small to mid-sized companies. And so that kind of HubSpot targeted place, it's a nice place where people have enough money to spend. Your product doesn't have to be $10 a month. They have real problems to solve. They're willing to spend money to solve the problems if it's an acute problem, or if it's something that really makes the money or saves them not a little bit of money, but a lot of money. Then they're willing to spend money to make money. So that's a pretty nice niche. Now, again, all these things I'm listing, they're obviously not complete rules. They're just, you asked like what I would be looking for. Like this is like, okay, if I, in what general direction would I aim my eyeballs? And or like what, I would look for these kinds of things. Now, of course, me personally, I would have to look at what I'm expert in, because everyone should do that. What do I know about? What do I have insight into? So like I have insight into the website world. I have insight into e-commerce. I have insight into media websites. I have insight into scaling infrastructure. So if I did something, and again, I'm not, because I'm not doing it, but if I were to do another thing, I would want to somehow leverage my expertise in some areas, right? Like, because that should give me either some advantage, or at least it should make me more efficient, more effective, make some decisions better than I would otherwise make. I wouldn't want to venture out into something I know nothing about, where it's much higher risk and there's no particular reason why I should be doing that. And I think everyone should do this, of course, but so it would make a lot more sense for me to make, for example, some kind of API infrastructure company. It would make a lot of sense because I know so much about that, versus I don't know, Toast Tab, but for dentists, where I know nothing. It's probably a good idea. And of course, there is software that does that. It's probably a good idea, but I know nothing about it. So it just makes no sense for me to go do that, even if it's a fantastic market, fantastic idea. But not for me. Not fantastic for me to do. It's fantastic for someone else who knows something about that, knows how to sell to dentists, and has some insight about what would be better or whatever. Like, it doesn't make any sense for me. So I'd also start with, what do I have? What are my assets? What are my skills? What are my capabilities? I have however many Twitter followers, whatever followers means. Such a terrible word, isn't it? And so like, what does that mean? Like, is there a product that would somehow resonate with them? Because that's an advantage I have. Again, I don't even know, and I don't care, because that's not why I do Twitter, and so I don't even know the answer. Probably not, by the way. But that would be the right question. What do I have? What do I have here? What matches that the best? Because that gives me the best chance of success. So that's the kind of thought processes I would use. Suss out like what might be a good opportunity. And of course, I mean anyone should do this, right? Like I just believe that this just makes sense.
I mean, you're going into such depth with this that at some point it almost seems like you were trying to convince yourself that you're not building another product. Like,
No,
I'm not doing
no,
this.
I've thought about this for so much. We've built multiple products at WP Engine, and I've written about it for a long time, and I continue to like to do that. Sometimes I angel invest in companies. All the time, people are talking to me about companies and things they're doing, and so I have a lot of thoughts on it. But that doesn't mean I want to make a company. That's very different. But if you're saying like, do I want to continue writing about it? Yes, like that is one of the things I'm definitely continuing to do. Have continued to do. So that's an outlet for me to
Are we
continue
to
to explore
expect a
these things
book?
without me making a company.
Are we to expect a book? Maybe is that the new venture?
I get asked that a lot. What I don't want to do is make a compendium of articles because
Hmm.
there already is one. You can go on my website and download. There's a PDF of everything that's automatically built. There, you have it. So that's not interesting to me. But if there were a concept, an actual concept, something that was a narrative structure, a theme, or some sort of idea that the book is supporting. In other words, if there was some reason why, oh, there should be a book because there's this concept or theory, or if not a theory, maybe just an attitude or a disposition or a methodology that has some sort of cohesiveness to it. Like it's called this, and the underlying ideas are this and that, and that's not just what you read everywhere else. And here's all this, and here's 300 pages of things to back it up, or how to do it, or whatever. Um, that could be interesting, but it's such a big project. So without knowing what that is, I'm not interested in just kind of, again, randomly categorizing articles by topic and then calling that a chapter and then publishing it like that. That's not, it's online already. You can go see it, you know. And true to what I was saying, there's no ads. I'm not selling a product. There's no courses. There's not even any tracking. Like I don't have Google Analytics on it. Like it, it really, like, true to what I said. I'm not making money. I'm not trying to, like, I'm really just trying to put stuff out there because I like to. So we'll see if there's a book concept in the future or not. I'm open to it, but I don't want to. I want it to. It has to be something.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people would read that. But just a couple more questions, and they're kind of usual here, just to reflect a little bit maybe on the journey. Um, what has been so far the biggest win and the biggest failure? Like, it could be for you as a founder, could be for a company, and again, any company probably.
Well, I guess the biggest win at WP Engine was hiring Heather Bruner to be our CEO 11 years ago. The company was growing very fast, and the job of CEO was changing into something very different, as it should. And um, it took me a few months to figure it out, but I figured out that, oh, I don't. Not only do I not have the skills needed to be the CEO of this fast growing company, I also don't want to learn them. Like it's not, that sounds like the kind of stuff I don't like and that it would lead to burnout. And so the CEO needs to have, needs to do these things or have these qualities. The company deserves it. The CEO needs to do it. And I would both be not as good at it and dislike it. It's just very bad combination. And Heather's the perfect CEO. And again, it's been 11 years. So, I mean, there you go. And our success, there's no doubt that it hinges on that. Like, yes, it was already going fast. So, okay. Yeah, of course, like it was already going really well. So in that sense, sure. But in the 11-year sense, which is most of it, our success in building amazing teams and amazing executive teams and products and our strategy development, and when we expanded into outside of America and so forth, like all of these things, raising some of our large rounds and working with new investors, like there's just the list goes on and on of things that all contributed and were part of our current success, and that's due to Heather's leadership. So I would say that's the best thing I did. The biggest win was was hiring Heather and stepping aside. I was a CTO, of course, technology, because product and engineering, that is my bag. That is what I should be doing. And so that was good. Um, Biggest failure is hard because it's a little, as you said, like each of the companies did well in their own, in their own way, and so it's hard to say that it's a little disingenuous to say there's a big failure. I would say a failure that I'm not proud of is at Smart Bear, I really burned out. And when I sold the company, it was more about me being burned out and less about the company or the people and so forth. And that's avoidable. And so, I mean, several of those things, like the burnout's avoidable. Selling when you don't want to is, well, I did want to. It's just, maybe with a different attitude and culture of the company and how I hired or how I delegated, it could have been quite different. Now, in retrospect, it was good for me and our employees because I had given away a lot of the company. I was very generous with that. So everyone got taken care of very well. So I am proud of that, actually. In fact, my lawyer is like, I can't believe how much of this company you gave away. So I am proud of that. Like, no one got screwed, that's for sure. So it's not that kind of story. But still, that's the wrong reasons. And so it's like in poker when you make the wrong decision and win, it's like, okay, but it's the wrong decision still. Or vice versa, you can make the right decision and lose. So that was the wrong. There was a wrong way to make a decision and a bad way to build the situation. So that's not good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for sharing the story anyway. And well, the last question is about a hack, and I would understand that there are no hacks, and there could be that story as well. But if there is anything that works or worked that was a bit unconventional, or something that's completely normal but worked for you in some kind of magical way that you could share, growth, hiring, whatever wise.
I'm not sure if I have a hack. I think one thing I would say that's sadly unconventional is when you're sending a cold communication, like an email or a tweet, it should be really short, like way too short, and it should have no corporate stuff in it. Like the amount of cold emails I get with a fancy banner, weird fonts, images in the footer, like I immediately know it's corporate and spam, and it is not, and like the language is not a human, and then it's pages and pages. Nowadays, business is moving at the speed of technology or whatever that starts with, like no human would ever say. Apparently, that's the norm because that's most of the spam I get. So I guess that's the normal mode. Even corporate newsletters are often like that. So I would say like 2 sentences, maybe one per paragraph. You're done, maybe. And of course, that means you have to have a really good hook, but you did anyway. And if you have pages of text, like it's not like they're reading all that. What do you think? So to me, it's just kind of obvious not to put corporate stuff, just plain text, very short, have an amazing hook, which is hard. But again, who said outbound was easy? Of course, it's hard. And so it shouldn't be a hack, I don't think, but it obviously is because almost nothing I get is like that.
Okay, that makes sense. I actually agree with you. Like sometimes when I get an email which is like super short and the hook is actually in the subject of an
Yeah.
email, like want to do this, or like what do you think, or like something like that, that you immediately know what this is about, and then there is like 2 sentences of explanation, and that's it. That like gives you immediately food for thought, and like you understand what this is about. So yeah, I think that's a well.
Yeah, there used to be a website called 3 Sentences, and it explained why all emails should be 3 sentences.
Okay, is it
All
still
might be
alive?
taking it too far, but I think the more you adhere to the 3 sentences philosophy, the better.
Yeah, I will 100% agree with you. The shorter the better. I don't think have I think my email to you was longer though. Sorry about that. But well, it worked. But well, thank you so much, Jason, for doing this. I mean, it's been amazing talking with you. Just kind of grasping the not even the way you built WP Engine and the rest of the companies, but just the way you think, and like how how you imagine it working. That was really fascinating. So thanks for sharing that. I'd be happy to do it again sometime.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and take care.